Only one can come out on top, either Justin's third regional championships or Shiliang's second, and continuing such strong play in Regulation G, carrying on from that top cut in Worlds a few months ago. But since they're using the same team and it's such a new thing, let's talk a little bit about this team. I think one way to look at it is that it is some of the best attacking offensive Pokemon that don't require any particular support, and then paired with the restricted Pokemon that necessitates the least support. Some of the other common non-restricted Pokemon are things like Incineroar and Rillaboom that really play supporting roles. But Justin and Shiliang have put an emphasis on attacking non-restricted Pokemon like Urshifu, Landorus, and Ogerpon Hearthflame. And then Calyrex is a Pokemon kind of stable on its own, where other things like Miraidon and Calyrex Shadow Rider or Groudon and Koraidon with the Sun and need very particular support Pokemon and lead you in a very specific direction. Calyrex can be played just by itself with its own Trick Room and its own bulk, and that lets you bring this kind of array of different attackers with them.
But I think something else that stands out about these attackers is the fact that they don't just rely on their sheer offensive power. You take a look at something like the Urshifu, it has Taunt as a supportive option. What about Roaring Moon? You have Tailwind as something that it has access to as well.
Yeah, you heard Nicholas mention this in the conversation. All of these Pokemon, whether it's Follow Me on Ogerpon, Taunt on Urshifu, or Tailwind on Roaring Moon, everything but Landorus provides a little bit more than just the attacking. A lot of teams in this format feel like they have their restricted that does all of the damage and support Pokemon, which means that if your restricted gets pinned or is difficult to use, you're in a really poor position because you can't find another way to do the damage. But with such a wide array of ways to deal damage, Justin and Shiliang don't end up in that same position. You can see the best evidence for that with how Justin just won that semifinal, leaving Calyrex Ice Rider at home for both games 2 and 3, and trusting that the Ogerpon, Landorus, Roaring Moon, and Urshifu could do the necessary damage.
Two friends meeting each other in the finals of the San Antonio Regional Championships, two team building partners, and two players that have been able to win regionals in the 2023 season. This is going to be a no-holds-barred match between these two incredible players. Let's see who comes out on top between Shiliang Tang and Justin Tang as we see the leads in this game number 1. Roaring Moon and Urshifu for Shiliang, and the Landorus and Urshifu for Justin Tang.
Both players opting to get Urshifu on the field. You know, a lot of matchups, you have really specific obstacles in your way because of your team, and you're trying to solve those from the beginning. Of course, with a mirror match like this, you're totally symmetrical. You don't have specific obstacles on the other side, and even sometimes in mirror matches you have really clear win conditions. One Pokemon that's super strong. It does not feel like that is the case in this mirror match. You heard Nicholas mention it. It feels like all 6 Pokemon could show up and have an impact here. That means the team preview is very open. A lot of it is going to come down to what initial advantage these two players can get based on the leads. And for now, Roaring Moon gives a speed advantage for Shiliang's side, but the offense is on the advantage for Justin's side. So there's a Terastallization coming out for Justin to try to press that offensive advantage despite the speed for Shiliang.
Well, this Water Terror is going to be very helpful for the Surging Strikes on the Urshifu on the opposing side, as Roaring Moon is free to set up this Tailwind. Look at how, with this Terra Water, this Landorus is able to take these hits like a champion. And so now Justin, with an Urshifu on his own side, to be able to be free and clear to deliver out some big blows, this Landorus can as well. Earth Power into the Urshifu is just a one-hit knockout. That is the power of a Life Orb on a Pokemon like this. And with the Urshifu now able to hit with the Surging Strikes, this is also going to be a pretty good chunk of damage. A free slot, though, for Shiliang to bring something in under those Tailwind conditions.
Yeah, very strong trade there. Justin spins the Terastallization in order to get the KO back onto Urshifu and not have to switch the Landorus out. Tailwind goes up. Justin could have had more out of that turn, right? If it had been close combat into Roaring Moon, instead it would have just been a KO, but there was too much risk that the Roaring Moon would instead go Flying type and then just Acrobatics the Urshifu on the other side, or Tailwind would just be a Flying type to resist close combat instead. So instead it's just Surging Strikes. And now the Calyrex Ice Rider hits the field on the other side. Water Terastallization still looks good here. Calyrex Ice Rider hits the field against 2 water types. No lower defense on Urshifu means that both these Pokemon stand up pretty well to Glacial Lance. They don't stand up as well to knock off an Acrobatics, though. Still a lot of damage threatened by Roaring Moon on the other side.
But I like the protects that Justin is going for here, because you know that with this Tailwind that's been set up by the Roaring Moon, Shiliang is not likely to go for something like the Trick Room. It makes those speeds very difficult to keep track of.
well, both players probably know better than us, but it's not out of the question that Calyrex under the Tailwind is also is faster than Landorus and Urshifu here, and would just be threatening a ton of damage. So part of that trade from turn 1 was Shiliang getting the Tailwind while the KO happened. Justin can take away part of that value by double protecting on this turn. If he's not expecting to need the protect on the next turn anyway, then just stalling away one of the turns of Tailwind opens things up a little bit more. I think so much is going to come down to where this Roaring Moon attacks. A knockoff into the Landers might be enough for a KO, or at least significant shift to make Glacial Lance a KO, whereas Acrobatics should be a KO into the Urshifu. So key decision for Shiliang here. You know that Protect is not available on either side because of the double Protect on the previous turn.
It's going to be the Roaring Moon that takes the Terra, so an increased power to all of those big acrobatics now that the booster energy has been expended. And Landorus tries to go for a double protect, not going to be able to get it though, so leaves it vulnerable to an attack coming through from this Calyrex, but it is going to be the acrobatics. Urshifu is able to hang on through that, so now it comes down to if this Glacial Lance is faster, and it is. Urshifu gets knocked out, Landorus hangs on, so it can deliver, could have been delivered a big attack, but it went for the double protect instead.
Calyrex wasn't threatening much damage there, but it was threatening enough damage to mean that either knockoff or acrobatics could be finished with Glacial Lance, and with the speed from the Tailwind, that would happen before either of these Pokemon could attack, which then also gives over a boost that we saw because the Glacial Lance is what finished the KO. I mean, that Justin was very much on the back foot, so Justin made a guess at it, tried to get a double protect on Landorus, hoping the knockoff would go there, and Urshifu would get to attack, but he gets fully punished for it, as Landorus was not targeted by anything but the Glacial Lance anyway, and just wasted a turn protecting and failing, while Urshifu went down.
But with the fail, you can at least ensure that the Landorus is going to be able to get the protect off this turn, stalling out the final turn of Tailwind. The opposing Calyrex Ice is going to go for the Glacial Lance, and let's remember that it is at +1 because of the KO it secured in that last game, but not enough because it's resisted damage into Justin's own Calyrex Ice. So dishing out and Glacial Lance of its own gets the KO onto the Roaring Moon. So you've stalled out all turns of Tailwind, and now Shiliang does not have that Tailwind setter anymore.
The KO was taken. It's definitely the cost of the flying terrestrialization that you lose the Terra there, you lose Roaring Moon not protecting on that last turn, and now the boosts have also evened out. The Calyrex Ice Riders on both sides have the boost. The Ogerpon now hits the field in a pretty good position to threaten the Landorus on the other side. We don't know the speed relationship, I don't think, between the Landorus and the Ogerpon yet. Depends on how the Pokemon are trained, but we know how bulky the Ogerpon on the other side is. So there's a good chance Landorus is faster and going to be the first thing to move here.
So Calyrex goes for a protect from Justin, and it is going to be the Landorus that gets a chance to attack first. A double connect on the Sandsear Storm with the Horn Leech going into the Ice Rider Calyrex. Looks like the Water Terra Landorus would have been a great target for that. But now that we see the Glacial Lance come out from Shiliang's own Ice Rider Calyrex into the Water Terra, well, it's just going to be barely enough to get the KO. That leaves an open slot, though. Justin now goes down to his final 2 Pokemon, but as we see from Shiliang, there is going to be a difference here. While Shiliang's 4th was at Ogerpon Hearthflame, Justin has this Roaring Moon in the back that he's been saving for this specific moment.
Roaring Moon is a great last Pokemon to have here because it gives you the agency in the last turn. The first Pokemon that's going to attack is Roaring Moon, and if Justin wants the Tailwind, the second Pokemon to attack will be Calyrex Ice Rider. Glacial Lance might be enough damage to just pick up the KO onto both of these Pokemon. If it's not, then you can go for the high horsepower. For now, though, follow me trying to redirect something away. Let's see what the Roaring Moon went for.
It's acrobatics, so it's just going to be a KO onto the Ogerpon, but now is the question, which Calyrex is going to be faster? If they are trained the same way, this could be a speed tie, but it's going to be Justin's that moves first. It's a high horsepower into Shiliang's, and with that KO, Justin goes up 1-0 in this series.
Well, it's often reductive to say that 6 Pokemon mirrors boil down to speed ties at the end of the day, but it sure felt like that one did. On the last turn, 2 Calyrex Ice Riders trained in the same way, with the same speed. One of them is going to move first. Had it been Shiliang's Calyrex Ice Rider, it would have gotten 2 KOs with Glacial Lance. and just ended the game. But instead, Justin moves first, gets the high horsepower, and ends the game on his own behalf to take a 1-0 lead. So we saw a lot of complex tradings, a lot of situations that weren't down to speed ties that ultimately led us to one Calyrex versus the other.
We don't get a chance to see this circumstance a lot, and so it's fascinating to be able to actually dive deeper into the intricacies of a mirror match here. We didn't see the same leads from both players, and they opted to lean on completely different strategies to start the game.
Right, both approached it differently. Shiliang wanted the speed control at the beginning. Justin wanted the speed control at the end with the Roaring Moon as the last Pokemon. One key piece there was a Sandsear Storm critical hit into the Calyrex Ice Rider that opened up high horsepower being enough damage into Calyrex Ice Rider at the end. I think Shiliang otherwise probably took the safer path through this game. So even though Justin won that game one, he might still be searching for adjustments and thinking about how to approach it differently, because I'm not sure how reproducible that game is.
You see the reactions in the camera, though. Justin, as you heard from Nicholas, just might be feeling himself a little bit. And sometimes it's that extra bit of confidence that can help you make some riskier plays or make you feel a little bit more like you can lean into your first gut reaction for a game.
Yeah, playing instinctually, just trying to lean on your own hot hand to continue to go through and make the right decisions. I think it's worth noting that Justin did make it through that with a few turns where that hot hand wasn't on, right? The protect with the Landorus when no targets were coming in that way that just lost a turn, and a few other decisions that weren't perfect, but because he had the final speed control to threaten down the Ogerpon and resolve to a speed tie, he was still able to take it in the end.
We'll take a look at this, a bit of an adjustment as the Roaring Moons on both sides are going to be led at the beginning of this game number 2. And we're going to see the Ice Rider Calyrex for Justin, and for Shiliang, the Urshifu.
In game 1, Justin brought his Calyrex Ice Rider in only near the end game, was the second player to do so. This time it's led out on the field, but it's a little bit vulnerable here. Something like Knockoff and Surging Strikes is quite a bit of damage into the Calyrex Ice Rider that could force a quick Terastallization, possibly. Though Fairy still going to be neutral against water, you still take a ton of damage for that, and Terra seems like it's very valuable. Though if Calyrex Ice Rider can get an attack off, it's threatening at a Glacial Lance into Roaring Moon, and with flying as the Terastallization, there's no defensive option there. And if you can get a KO and start to get those boosts, it's really impactful. For now, just Tailwind to boost up the Urshifu and get Shiliang moving first.
It's going to be a Tailwind on both sides, so offset off the bat. And Urshifu now will be able to hit these Surging Strikes in, but look at this. Calyrex, a little bit risky here for Justin to not go for something like that Fairy Terastallization. Still has to take about half damage from those Surging Strikes, but you get to get this ginormous Glacial Lance off with Roaring Moon and Urshifu on the receiving end of this, and a one-hit knockout onto the Roaring Moon makes Justin feel like he's a bit more ahead.
Yeah, this is a strong start from Justin. Shiliang basically has to match Tailwind, because otherwise Calyrex would have moved first before Urshifu, gotten that Glacial Lance off anyway, and then KO'd the Roaring Moon. You can't allow one-sided Tailwind in this game, because otherwise all of those speed ties become just a clear speed advantage for Justin. So Justin is able to lean on that force-matched Tailwinds that then lead to a damage advantage for Justin, because Glacial Lance is more valuable in that position than Surging Strikes.
But now we get a chance to see these speeds play out again. Matched Tailwinds means that we're back to ground zero with the speeds between these two Ice Rider Calyrex. So who can get the better end of it this time? Roaring Moon with the knockoff into the Ice Rider Calyrex is big, but with this Water Terra on this Urshifu, you're going to be dealing amplified damage from these Surging Strikes. Without the Terra, it wasn't enough to be able to get the KO onto the Ice Rider Calyrex to about half HP, but with this Terra, absolutely you pick up enough damage to make up for that small bit of difference you were missing. So Justin does not get a chance to attack again with his own Ice Rider Calyrex. We're tied up 3-3 as Shiliang sets up Trick Room in this turn.
Yeah, Shiliang could have just had a Glacial Lance for KO into Roaring Moon, but prioritizes the Trick Room there. When you see how fast the Pokemon Justin has left are, that may be a good decision. The Water Terastallization also removed the risk of an Acrobatics KO into Urshifu on that previous turn that would have denied the Surging Strikes back onto Calyrex Ice Rider. So while Justin got the initial advantage by having Ice Rider out on the field first, the water typing of Urshifu meant that it could take the one Glacial Lance and be a damage threat into the second turn and have the natural speed advantage once those Tailwinds were matched. Now under Trick Room, of course, all the speeds are still the same, so it's just about which Pokemon are left. And it's an advantage for Shiliang that Trick Room is up while he's the only one with a Calyrex Ice Rider left. Only one Pokemon in this matchup is really benefiting from the Trick Room, and it's the Ice Rider, but there it goes off the field for now. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Amoonguss come out instead to really take advantage of that Trick Room.
Yeah, especially if you expect a Surging Strikes to be able to come its way. You just know that it's going to be able to soak up that damage just a little bit better. So take a look. And there's no Rocky Helmet on this Amoonguss, but imagine if there was. Either way, it's one way that Shiliang can still make good use of that Trick Room when you have it set up from that Calyrex.
Right, neither of these Pokemon can deal with Spore well, and then Roaring Moon just protects in front of Urshifu and goes down to close combat anyway, was worried about Glacial Lance, and instead just takes close combat with Unseen Fist, picks up the KO. Shiliang demonstrably ahead now.
Justin is only down to 2 Pokemon left. You have this Landorus and this Urshifu in front of the Urshifu and Amoonguss, and how are you going to tear away from this?
No Ogerpon also means there's no Spore immunity here, so in Trick Room with Spore safely threatened against either of these Pokemon. There's also not a clear damage threat back into this Urshifu. On the other side, you can limit the Landorus with Spore, and then Urshifu would have to close combat to get the KO back. You could also Rage Powder to move damage away and just go for Surging Strikes into Landorus on the other side. The good news for Justin is that Terastallization is still available, so Landorus can protect itself that way, but it's not protecting itself from Spore.
But it's also not protecting itself from Unseen Fist. So something that you don't necessarily see every day is a Terastallization committed onto a Pokemon that's just going to go for a Protect. Something that Justin fell victim to in the turn prior. He's not going to end up letting that get the better of him this time. Protect is also going to be good to make sure that this Landorus doesn't get spored on this turn, as Urshifu goes for the taunt to shut the Amoonguss down in Trick Room. A nice turn for Justin to try to get a little bit more back in the series. With Shiliang's Urshifu going all out on the offensive, you can see where that Water Terror really paid off, even with the Protect.
This is such a smart play. There were so few avenues to try to sneak back into this game for Justin with Trick Room up and Amoonguss on the field. But using the combination of the Protect to block the Spore, the Water Terastallization to block the damage of Surging Strikes, and the Taunt to prevent the Spore on the next turn has now bought Landorus a turn to go out on the offense. It was going to be really key for Justin to have a chance in this game that Landorus could go out and attack. Now you have to worry about an attack from Amoonguss plus an attack from the Urshifu, and that's the thing now. Pollen Puff is going to lower it enough that close combat.
Oh, it's a knockout into the Urshifu. Shiliang was hoping that his own Urshifu would be able to move before Justin's, but that's just not the case. So Shiliang loses the Terra as well as one of the biggest offensive pieces to his team when there's that Ice Fighter Calyrex in the back that's already taken a big attack. Earth Power into the Amoonguss is still very strong, and we're going to see that neutral damage. Make sure that that Amoonguss is within knockout range. Surging Strikes would be able to pick it up. That Ice Fighter Calyrex is below half, and there's no Rage Powder anymore because you taunted it away.
Amoonguss cannot Rage Powder. The Urshifu is healthy enough to take a Glacial Lance easily. Trick Room is also soon to expire. It feels like with another speed tie win of Urshifu versus Urshifu, Justin has taken the commanding lead. If the speed tie goes the other way and the other Urshifu moves first, like close combats the Landorus, takes that KO, prevents the Earth Power into Amoonguss, and things look very different.
Ooh, but the Pollen Puff into the Ice Rider Calyrex, that's one way to be able to neuter a lot of the damage that Calyrex already took. With a high horsepower into the Urshifu, that's going to be the choice to make sure that that Urshifu does get below half HP, but with no Rocky Helmet on the Amoonguss, you get a chance to have these Surging Strikes hit for absolutely free damage. Shiliang is down to just the Ice Rider Calyrex left in this game 2, where it is dire. Justin Tang is one Pokemon away from becoming a 3-time regional champion, and Trick Room is over.
Trick Room is over. Calyrex will be the last thing to move. The Pollen Puff really crucial to give a chance that Earth Power plus Surging Strikes is not a KO here, but based on the damage we've seen, I expect it is. I think these two attacks will just come in and decide this game for Justin.
Earth Power from the Landorus brings it to below half HP. The Surging Strikes look like it's going to be very, very close. One hit, two, it's in the red, and with a third Surging Strikes, Ice Fighter Calyrex goes down, and Justin Tang, 3-time regional champion, winning the San Antonio Regional Championships.